What's up, guys? Welcome into another edition of Bogey Free, being brought to you, of course, by the FTN umbrella. We got we're going to be mostly focusing on bets, so FTN bets, of course, and we'll wrap up tonight with a little bit of DFS talk, so FTN daily as well. I'm Matt Jones. You can find me on Twitter at MattJonesTFR, and I am being joined by my wonderful co-host here, Axis. You can find him on Twitter at Axis_DFS. What's up, man? How was the Sony Open?
A mixed bag.
Yeah.
Showdown went well, profitable. Main slate, I bubbled everything with a 5 out of 6, and then betting pre-tournament was okay. Every live bet lost, or I guess live bet. Round matchups were 0-5, so that was pretty nice. The joys of golf. Lost a lot of them on 18, lost a few with guys shooting 5 under. It was just one of those weeks.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, the round matchups are obviously, there's a fair bit of extra variance built into, 18 versus 72 holes, but you also have to figure on these lower scoring courses that, you are going to have those. You're going to have the guy that you back, just shoot really well, and it still just won't be enough.
Yeah. Most of them, I let it go. I obviously betting long, like losses happen. I don't tilt too much. But the final round one did kill me because it was Glover against Kisner. They were both 5 under going to 18. And of course, Lucas just finds a way to completely miss the green on his Eagle Pro, green under regulation approach, and then just hits a horrible chip shot. Obviously, he's not hitting a 15-footer. Kisner nails a 10-footer, and it's just like, yep, that's just how this week went.
Yeah, and you're gonna have those weeks, of course. I think the hardest thing for me to balance, honestly, with just sticking with the round head-to-head type stuff is just when is it too much, and when are you not making enough plays to really realize your edge. Like it's a hard balance to strike. Like I think I ended up with 10 round head-to-heads this week, and that was probably too many. Actually, I might have even had, I think I had 12. I think I was 5 and 7. And do you just fire? Do you just fire? Or do you try and, obviously we, if we think we have an edge, we should be playing. But I'm still kind of trying to juggle that in my head, right? Like, how do you justify making 5-6 plays in a single round, where some days there's none? Like, I guess it's just line dependent, but wondering how you sort of juggle that.
Same way. I do have a little bit of a higher threshold that I need to see edgewise from betting round to round, and mainly that's because it was harder to back test some of the single round stuff for me. I didn't have a lot of the previous data to mess around with, so for a while it was kind of like on the fly. Like, I trusted my work, obviously, so but the ROI is smaller. There's more plays though. I bet less on them typically, because you got to be on top of it too, right? Like, if I'm betting single round matchups, like, I just get that feeling of like, well, crap, I have to look at every round now. Like, if I miss a round, like maybe I missed my 4 winners this week, and I bet all the losers in rounds 1 and 4 because I was busy during the night for rounds 2 and 3, and I couldn't run them. So it's like mentally for me that way too. But if I get 6, I fire on 6. I typically don't find that many edges in the round matchups. Just maybe it's how I do it. I don't know how many other people run across, but I think I had 5 total. I don't remember if I ran round 1 though last week or not, and if I just didn't find any. Sometimes round 1 gets lost in everything else pre-tournament. But I went, it was 0-5. And then in Century Tournament of Champions, I went 1-0-5. So I bet 6 total, and I pushed 5 of them. So
yeah.
The round by round stuff, I treat it like, it's some weeks I run my models and it'll spit out like, I don't know, 8 or 10 top 40 bets. And it's like, well, crap. Like I know mentally, like just looking at that, like, well, they're all not gonna, but they could, right? It's top 40 or even top 20. Sometimes I get quite a few and it's like, goodness, like what I would need for all of these to hit, but you don't need that, right? Like, I think that sometimes people get in their head, everything you bet must win. Like you bet a guy because you think he's truly going to win. No, I bet it because I think he does it more often than what the market says. So,
Right.
like you said, I have a threshold from, and I have the data to go with what I've won historically at, and I kind of just base it off that. So,
yeah,
like sometimes it's harder to pull the trigger on certain weeks, on certain guys, on certain matchups. I just try to plug my nose and do it, and I'll forget about it within a week or two anyway. And yeah, hopefully in the end, it all adds up positive.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's honestly, within the tournament, there's so many different ways to figure out, like how much are you counting rounds during the tournament? Are you ignoring them? Are you only, updating a couple percent? Are you by round 4? Are you just looking at the tournament? Like I've heard smart people go about it in a lot of different ways, like smart, successful people go about it in a lot of different ways. So balancing all of that is always super interesting. So personally, I usually stray away from the round 1 stuff because I'm like, I either want the full tournament or I want to see how they're playing after the first day and at least feel like I have a sanity check on a 1 round thing. If I show a gigantic edge, I'll play a round 1 head to head here and there, but it's like for the same reason that I don't really bet into first round leader markets. Like I'd rather just get like outrights and add as I go if I see something in the numbers. But yeah, it's interesting to try and find all of those different things need to have some sort of an equilibrium at some point, because you can't just fire on every single thing that comes close to showing an edge. So trying to figure out your thresholds and trying to figure out like, okay, realistically, like what am I, like what do I need to go right here? Like, am I betting all these head to heads that are then like, anti-correlated to all these other things that I'm doing, and like then you're like hedging by accident. Like there's all this stuff that goes into it because there's just so many moving parts.
Right. I think just to stick with the single round, like I think if you wanted to bypass round 1, again, like I'm sure guys who are doing this for a living and a large chunk of income are probably firing on smaller edges. They might have it more fine-tuned even than I do. They might just be better at the math, whatever have you. I set a margin of error threshold because I know for a fact that my model does not, I'm not taking into account a lot of different variables that I think larger movers in the market can and do. So in order to combat that, well, I'm not betting for, maxing out at a bookmaker or even a whatever other book you want. So I can fire at openers. So like, I don't need my model to necessarily be beating all these guys who come into the market on a late Tuesday, early Wednesday. So I set my margin of error a little larger just to be a little safer in that sense. And I can fire at smaller edges if I think things are going well enough. Like you can use round 1 maybe to even like if you have an idea of what the course should be playing like maybe this week would be a bad example because we have 3 different courses, but like at Sony, if you get 1 round of data, it might not tell you a ton about an individual golfer, but it might tell you how the course is playing this year, or at least if it's like suddenly if we see an outlier round of like off the tee mattering a lot at Sony, well, maybe that's because the rough's up. So the guys who are hitting it longer have an advantage because they're further down. And even the short hitters, when they miss the fairway, are stuck in this terrible rough. I don't know. Right. Kind of just a off the top example, but like maybe you can use round 1 to fit your course a little more. I don't know, maybe 2 rounds even. It's a puzzle piece that I don't want to pretend that I have anywhere remotely solved. But yeah, keep firing on the edges and keep tweaking as necessary. So.
Yeah, for sure. And, we, at the end of the day, we believe that we have these edges, and some of these things we could just be getting lucky on. And some of these things we should probably be betting more on, and we'll never really know which is which, in the near term at least. All right, so let's switch gears here. Let's talk about the American Express this week. We have, like you just alluded to, we do have a 3-course rotation. So that means, I know, it's like a meme at this point. That means everybody gets 3 rounds, and the 6-6 won't matter as much in DFS, and X, Y, Z, all that stuff. Like you've heard it 1,000 times already this week. But in particular with these like multi-course rotations, how do you deal with all of these moving parts? Like for the round head-to-heads, like, are the courses different enough where you think that the like, say 2 guys are paired up 2 days in a row, and there are head-to-heads on 2 different courses, like how much do you account for the course change? And is there a particular like read that you have on any of the courses?
Normally in the past, the books have been smart enough to not offer round by round with guys who are at different courses.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess that, maybe with the new markets opening up, new books, perhaps. The problem is most of them copy lines or get lines from a provider. So it's not really like DraftKings has to pay attention. It's their line provider, and they probably provide to a bunch of other books too. So it's very rare that I've seen like this. But yeah, I mean, if you can find one where one guy's on La Quinta and one guy's on the Nicklaus course, that there's an edge there for the guy at La Quinta. You have to figure out how you want to quantify that and how you want to adjust their baseline and all this other stuff, along with course fit, weather, all that fun stuff too. So I don't do anything pre-tournament for any of that because I don't recall seeing it at books anyway that I have access to. So if it popped up late tonight, I haven't even looked if round ones are out yet. I'd look into it. But I just don't. It's kind of like the first round leader stuff. Like, it's been a couple of years. I think I hit John Rahm. I don't bet first round leader very often. I hit John Rahm a couple of years ago at Torrey, where they do the split courses, and I forget even the book. But anyway, they posted first round leaders for everybody. It wasn't course dependent, and obviously the North course, even after its modifications and everything, still plays easier, right? And John Rahm was going off early on the North course at like 18-1. So, okay, I'll fire. Got lucky. He hit it. It's very rare on these 3-course ones too. Like when they get to Pebble Beach, you don't see it, but you should keep your eye out. You never know. I mean, mistakes happen. And especially if it gets posted, at least here in the US, I don't know about UK followers or Canadian, what books you're using, but if it's posted, it's going to get paid out. They might mark your account as like, oh, this guy might be actually looking for edges. But yeah, so I really don't look into too much of that because a lot of it, the books just don't screw up that badly normally. And if they do, then I'll try to scramble. Yeah,
for sure. All right, so let's we have our consensus play of the week here for the head-to-head.
Yeah.
I ran my stuff this morning. You had loaded plays into the tracker already, and I messaged you and mentioned this head-to-head, and you said you had already hit it. Of course, being Axis and me being Matt, of course you got the better number. But it has settled at -120 with Tringali over Reed for the tournament, and that's where I hit it at. So obviously I am still showing value up to that point. I don't think that I personally would go past like -125, but I think that there's, I mean, I have a significant gap between Tringali and Reed, just from like a rating perspective. So curious your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, so I inexplicably closed what I actually made Tringali. I believe it was like -130. It's pretty large. And I went to look because when I find that stuff, once again, I don't think the model's perfect or I'm the best at this. So I went and looked, and I mean, you can see just like narrative speak, like since June, they've just been playing different levels of golf. Tringale really wasn't good off the tee, though. He had corrected that. Like, I've been on Tringale. I feel like he's been winning me and doing well for me in DFS for a while. He added a lot of distance, and you can see it in his off the tee numbers, dating back like 8-9 months, like the COVID era of starts. Last June, all of a sudden something happened, and he suddenly couldn't hit the ball off the tee anymore. But then you get back to the fall season, and I don't know if he figured out what he did wrong or what, but suddenly the strokes gained off the tee were back. So that's a good sign because he's been very good approach around the green putting. Patrick Reed just has been extremely inconsistent outside of a second place at the Bermuda Championship or Bermuda Classic. I forget what they even call that event. Terrible field. So good for Patrick for heading out there and finishing second place. You get your FedEx points and all that fun stuff. Other than that, though, he's been extremely inconsistent. He has switched to PXG, which we love to mock. Anybody who plays PXG goes there to die. Obviously, guys can play well with the equipment. It is funny, though, how things happen. But it's not in the model for me. I just like to chuckle at it. But, yeah, in general, I thought I got it at plus 100. I thought that was a pretty solid gift. And yeah, it's settled at 120. I feel like that's, if you want to hit that, it's not the worst thing in the world. Once again, things move. We alert the Discord and the bet tracker when we put it in, but I saw that, and I didn't think there was anything glaring when I went back and looked through past results, like to make sure there was any issues. Tringale's just, maybe it's name recognition that gets Reed. He's won here before. I don't know. I don't. It's I don't know. It's probably weird for a lot of people to make that betting Cameron Tringale against Patrick Reed. I don't know, but you do what you got to do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, I have a pretty significant just gap in their general power ranking as it is. And then once I threw it through the sim, it even still had value at minus 120 by the time that I actually put it in the tracker. So I'm good on that. So the other, like I guess the second biggest skill gap, I hate to say skill gap, but the second biggest rating gap that I have at the moment would be Corey Connors over Abraham Answer. That was minus 130 when I threw it in the tracker. I have DraftKings up, so I'm just gonna double check. Yeah, that's still sitting there as well. Just, I mean, like Answer has been struggling. Like he just doesn't seem like the same dude. Like he hasn't. When's the last time he really even like did anything? Like
his win, probably.
Yeah,
I'm not looking at his results.
He won the FedEx St. Jude, and I mean he played, okay. He had a top 10 in the playoffs, and then T11 in a 30-person field, and then like a couple okay things in the fall. But like over his past 4 starts, it looks good because it was a T14, but it was the hero, so that's like
right.
third to last. So yeah, I think that not that he can't pull it together, but I think he's been trending in the wrong direction. And obviously Connors just has been playing much better as of late. At least he finished 11th last week, I think, somewhere around there, 11th or 12th. And I don't think he's missed a cut in quite a while. Maybe looks like July was the last time he missed a cut. So yeah, like I said, I have a pretty significant gap there as well. And he, even at minus 130, I don't mind that for a tournament matchup.
Yeah, I made Corey less. I made him the favorite. I don't have him as gapped as you. between him and Answer, but obviously, like you said, I can see the trend, and that's part of knowing your own model too. I know sometimes the way I weight things, sometimes the model may not catch up if there's a drastic shift in someone's play. I'm not saying what Answer's done is drastic, but he had an extremely great run there with that win in there too. So it's little things like that where I maybe not as good at in how I model things, but I'm fully aware of how mine sets up. So like if someone else was looking at this, they might not know, but it's like, okay, I know my model sometimes just doesn't catch up to quick increases or decreases in play. I don't know. It's hard to explain once again, but yeah, I have Connors minus 121 is what I made him. So still have him a solid favorite over Abe. I couldn't quite get to what the market's at though.
Yeah, I mean, if it depends on what your, like you said, what your weights are. Like if I just pulled it up, if I just look at, his both of their last 100 rounds, their rating there, they're literally neck and neck. But like when you switch over to like last 24 rounds, and it just completely goes away for Answer pretty quickly. And my stuff, I think I've weighted it. I've changed it over the last like probably 6 months to account for a little bit more recent form. I used to be like super, super heavy long-term form. And it was just like, it was too much. Like it wasn't realistic. It wasn't matching. It wasn't catching up to these like 3 tournament streaks where guys can get hot. And my numbers just weren't updating fast enough for, the last 12 rounds or whatever. And then, by the time it catches up, then they're too late. And the golfer is back to being whatever they started off as. So, I think that's probably another thing that we're always trying to balance, but I feel like my numbers are closer to market now than they used to be. Which I don't know, maybe that's excellent or maybe that's awful. But either way, I feel more confident in the edges that actually show up now on guys like this, where things recently fell apart or recently got super hot. And now I'm like, all right, well, that's at least somewhat captured in my numbers, where it's not just like, 70% their last 150 rounds or something like that. Like that's too much long-term probably.
Yeah. I mean, I can even see it over the last 3 years. Like I remember when I was so happy I built my first model to rate golfers, doing sims, things like that. And I was able to win with pretty well only a long-term model. Like I wasn't good enough with what I was doing to incorporate a bunch of different stuff at the time. So I was weighting stuff, but it was more long-term, get out the errors from short-term data with out of bounds shots, things that I couldn't do at the time. So I felt like I had to use longer term. And again, betting openers, that was fine. But I don't know, maybe you could still beat some openers. There's some things that are still opened up to me that I can look at without even going to my model yet. I'm like, all right, I'm going to like that. I still run it. So I can base my wager amount, but so you could still maybe get away with that, but the market's changing. Like you have sites that are putting out a lot of useful information that more and more people are able to read and use. Like it's not necessarily a bad thing for like you just have to adapt and adjust. Like my first time I ever built a model at all, it looks nothing like what I use now. Right. Yeah. It's all just kind of built upon each other though. Like I've learned a lot, like you have to, right. And I'm not doing anything majorly different all the time. Like it's not like I have to do a major overhaul every month, but things change, right? So you have to try to think of new angles to incorporate, back test. It's a fun puzzle. So
yeah,
but yeah, sure. Definitely the recent form stuff. There are some interesting ways to go about incorporating all that, but it's definitely more necessary now, I think.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's switch over to a couple of finish position bets that we're interested in. I put in Mr. List. I think he's going to be a popular DFS option, which typically goes pretty poorly. That's
But he
not
gets
that's
3
not
rounds.
that's not a that's not a data-based take. That's just anecdotal, but I don't remember that going particularly well in the past. But that being said, I did show value on him pretty much through all the finishing position markets. So I put him in for an outright in a top 20. What are your thoughts here? Have I made a
What you
grave
get him
mistake?
at for top 20?
For top 20, that's a very good question. I have it up. Hang on.
I didn't bet it, so I doubt I saw value.
I put it in on FanDuel at 290.
Okay, yeah, I think I made him plus 310 or something. But I do think, once again, knowing my stuff to market, I think I do incorporate some putting and such a little more maybe than others, which never helps guys like Luke List.
Yeah.
Like when you sort by guys off the tee, I mean, he's just pummeling the ball. I mean, he's obviously keeping it in play, giving himself great looks at the green. So like I get it. It sound like broken records. Everybody does when they talk about that, but like that's because people aren't stupid anymore. They realize what sets up golf and what makes a golfer consistent, what makes a golfer good. He struggled to win, so obviously the T20 is where I prefer to get a Luke List type if I was firing. But just a little high for me. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with, right? Like I did sort by just, I think I just pulled 20 rounds for recent form just to have some strokes gain numbers. And he was right up there when I sorted by off the tee. I think he's third behind Cantlay, or second behind Cantlay for me. And the approach numbers are there too, right? And he's losing almost a stroke around putting with all that as well. So it's insane.
Yeah, I made him around 235 plus 235. So, yeah, we'll see.
I mean, you know what you're getting,
I'm not
right?
thrilled
Like
about it. Like I'm
mean,
not gonna watch him. Like I'm not gonna follow it. I'm just gonna see what happens Sunday night. Like I'm not even gonna star him in the app. Like I'm not gonna pay any attention to it because I can't.
Right. It's just going to be a control F on the leaderboard Sunday night. Yeah,
exactly. You had a top 40 bet that you loaded up over at FanDuel. What are you looking at there?
Yeah. So we're taking Harold Varner III at plus 175 at FanDuel. Another guy, I mean, you feel like he plays well enough to win. He's getting there. He definitely improved his putting over last year. He's got the same type of vibes though as Luke List, in a sense that the ball striking is not nearly as good. The iron plays fine. The off the tee is good enough. It's positive. He improved his around the green game over the last couple of years, and then last year saw pretty decent strides in the long term putting for Harold Varner. Can he keep that up? I don't know, but for like when you look, he got a little more consistent, and when he was making cuts, like that's always a question too. But when he's made the cut, he's habitually finished inside the top 40. Again, that's anecdotal narrative type stuff, but when you look at things, it's nice to see though that like, okay, he doesn't just necessarily slouch on the weekend. He's not just happy, okay, I made the cut, I'm getting checks. Like, I don't know, maybe there's some push there to get towards the top of the leaderboard. He has enough top 20s. I think last year was maybe his best top 20 percentage in his career per number of starts. I don't have that in front of me anymore. But I don't know. I don't necessarily trust him much either. Like these guys, like, I don't know. Like I said, I like to incorporate a little bit of putting. I just can't, like, which is why Luke List probably never really gets on my radar for much. Like,
right.
That's hard to stomach half a stroke long-term losses on the greens like that. I don't know. Like I said, Varner's improved even when I'm looking at long-term here on his putting. So if the can't win stuff bothers you with him, and we've seen him get close to victories and kind of gag it. I hate to throw that word out there. Winning golf is difficult, even for the best golfers in the world who win at a decent amount. We get hypnotized by what Tiger did when we all grew up and watched that.
Right.
Maybe he's learning what he needs to do, what he needs to shore up in the final round. I don't know. But again, that's why I like to run these top 40s now. That's a new market in the last year for me in Michigan. So I found that to be another nice little market you can hit at, because I like betting matchups a lot too. So this is another one where you just take some of that invariability out. Like, it's much easier, obviously, to predict a guy's finishing in the top 40 instead of getting all the luck and all the bounces to win a golf tournament.
Yeah, for sure. And for anybody who's in here now, that number has not moved. So you'll be good Perfect. To go if you load up on FanDuel. I also I didn't throw this in the sheet, but I was looking through, and we were joking earlier that we're basically like cave people when it comes to looking at the top 30 and top 40 markets, because we have to have every book open and we have to search for every little thing. We're not scraping that stuff at the moment. So as I was with my little chisel going through and trying to figure some of this stuff out, I did just hit Kramer Hickok. I know that's gross. But top 40, why not? What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, you definitely could not lose that bet. And honestly, you mentioned the going through these different books. I mean, if we're going to be completely blunt and honest on the show, most of them all you'll notice come from FanDuel. Like, they just offer so much better top 40 odds than DraftKings. Even most of the position finishing, to be quite honest with you. I do pop a few T20s elsewhere. BetMGM has no dead heat, which is very nice. So if you're betting T10s, T20s, you should always check BetMGM. Even if the number is semi-close, if you're able to run numbers on dead heat results as well, you might find that a slightly smaller number, but with no dead heat at BetGM is actually the better wager. So just keep that in mind. Like, I always just start at FanDuel to run top 40s. And then I know which guys I have to check at DraftKings and the other books. But FanDuel is almost always seems to be the best numbers for these higher positional finishes.
Yeah, especially I feel like sometimes they put so much of the equity into the favorites that like they just have to price up some of these guys. Like the middle, like the mid-range guys are, and even the longer shots are, like 90% of the time you're gonna have the best number at FanDuel, because that's just the way that they price out. And I don't know, I guess how they manage the risk of these, the top guys. And then the percentages have to add up to something. So it has to come from somewhere else. So that's just sort of our, that's my New Year's resolution, is to try and get better at making sure that I check 30s and 40s, and eventually I'll join you in these group bets and nationality bets. Although I did hit Sepp Straka for top continental European this past week, so that was an interesting
fun too, right?
It was such an interesting sweat, because I'm like staring at all the flags and I'm like, wait, I'm looking on the app and I'm like, RSA, okay, that's South Africa, that's not Russia, so I'm good there. And then I'm like, oh, Barjot, I'm like, this French dude is winning by a stroke that I didn't even know I had to worry about. It was a very interesting sweat.
Yeah, I got smoked by Rye last week. Honestly, even if Rye made the cut, he might have lost to Dusty Donald. It was magical round. Good for Luke. He put the walker aside. He got out there and managed to play pretty well, actually. So, tough scene. Hey, you win some, you lose some.
It happens. Yeah, it sure does. All right, so we can wrap up here with just sort of a brief DFS talk. We did we have been discussing in the, I almost said Slack, in the Discord, with some of the subscribers about Showdown this week. Obviously there's the 3 courses. Just, I would suggest making sure that that you check out the ownership projections, and you should probably take a stand on one of the courses, and see how it goes for you. I would not suggest, spreading out and going like 2 from each course in Showdown this week.
Not if you can help it. I guess like the fine line would be like you build this awesome team you want of golfers at either La Quinta or Stadium, what have you, and you have enough salary to go get John Rahm, who's playing the Nicholas course, which is habitually the redheaded stepchild of the one we target for Showdown.
Yeah.
Like, okay, it's John Rahm, and you can go low at any of these courses, right? If you just want to touch on that real quick, like you hear a lot, like La Quinta's the easiest on tour when they played it in 2020, things like that. But like, there's plenty of birdies to be had at Stadium course too. The problem with the Stadium course is there are plenty of bogeys and double bogeys to be had there as well with all the trouble. So you're risking, okay, there's potentially more birdie holes out there on Stadium. But if your guy finds any trouble, you're losing points. And then La Quinta you're not going to have as many bogeys there. Like your bad holes are going to be pars there.
Right.
And then there's potentially some more eagles at La Quinta. So it's weighing, like you said, all right, you know what, then I'm going to maybe only play a mixture of Stadium and La Quinta, unless it's like Cantlay, Rahm, if I have the space for it on Nick, right. Maybe people won't play Rahm. I'm sure they will, but it goes back to like even the Dell Technology match play. Like everyone talks strategy on every pod out there. We're doing it. Everyone else is doing it. And yet there's still going to be a large portion of the field who doesn't listen to any of these pods. They're just out there making lineups as they're driving to work, at the red light or whatever in the morning. Like, oh, a golf tournament's starting a little later this week in California. Like, not everyone does it, so there's automatically some rake already paid. Yes, more and more people are getting smarter with this, but I mean, you still open it up, and you still find lineups that make you scratch your head. I mean, there was lineups last week I had on a site that I was in 3 and 4 man type tournaments, and a couple people used Bryson. Cool. I guess you paid the rake for me and the other guy in this 3 man to battle it out. So it pays to do the research, and it pays to stick by the process, even if you think that's what everyone else is doing.
Yeah. It was one of the most amazing things that I've seen. I have some lineup data, and I'm working on a project that will, I don't know, hopefully be out by like the Masters or something, because it's just a massive undertaking, and I am just struggling to find the time to clean up all the data. But when I do, the one thing that I've noticed as I've been looking at all this stuff is like, it's amazing how many people enter these big GPPs and literally do not put a lineup in. Like,
yeah,
like it's not like a significant chunk, but there's like a few hundred lineups in every major GPP that, like, I'm talking, like 40K entries, 70K and whatever it is, but like a few hundred lineups that just don't exist. Like that they're literal just zero. Like there's nothing, or they were obviously placeholders that never got updated. That, the total salary is like 36,000 or something. You know what I mean? Like it's just something ridiculous.
That's the stuff you find though in like the lower stakes. Like it's harder to win, but there's more dead lineups. Whereas if you're paying, like you're not going to find that in the $555 GPPs where there's just like a handful of just lineups that weren't entered at the end. Like maybe you run into somebody once in a while, but it's not a weekly basis once you get up into those price ranges.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So real quick, just a few of the optimal optimal percentages that popped up. Rahm is just completely breaking everything. He's like
It worked out
double.
well for us last week.
he's like double what Scheffler is, who comes in second. And then going down a little bit, Johnny Vegas, who I believe you like as.
Oh, may have lost Matt. So he was talking about Johnny Vegas there, 8,100. I do like Johnny quite a bit this week as well. Again, the distance should play well here. I do believe he won here way back. Can't think of the years off the top of my head. But yeah, Johnny Vegas definitely someone that intrigues me with his ability off the tee. We got Matt back. There you are.
My computer just went back to the welcome screen, and
fun.
But that was actually pretty quick. I didn't think that was going to work out as well as it just did.
Well, I just got done explaining why Johnny Vegas is going to take us to the promised land. So
perfect. And then you had a couple of other like deeper GPP darts that you were thinking about.
So one's Hayden Buckley. I was on him last week. I don't see a major reason to jump off. Long term, I say long term loosely with him. We don't have a ton of strokes gained data, so long term, recent form, it's all kind of one with Hayden Buckley when you're looking at stat specific stuff, and not just strokes gained total. But 7,200, I think there's no issue going back there. And then another one, 6,800, looking at Davis Riley. Again, similar. We don't have a ton of strokes gained data. Davis Riley has shown to be a serviceable putter, pretty solid ball striker. Recently the irons are slightly up. So I think those are two guys that you can look to if you're trying to jam Rahm into your lineups, or if you want to start with a Cantlay, who's also up there at 10.9K.
Sounds good to me. All right, man. Well, good chat as always. I hope we weren't rambling too much, but I like to have your undivided attention and be able to pick your brain about some of this stuff. So hopefully that's valuable for you guys that are listening. We are always having these types of conversations either with each other or with subscribers in the Discord for FTN Bets and FTN Daily. Both of us are in both of those Discords pretty regularly leading up to the tournament and during the tournament. And we also have, obviously, Alex pops in there. Javi pops in there to show us his screenshots, and it seems like every single day.
Showdown's been good.
Yep. And Frank. So Frank's been doing some betting stuff for us as well. So make sure that you are checking us out. You can use code Bogey Free. You can use code Access. Same deal. You're gonna get 20% off. And come chat. Let us know what you guys think about the show. And other than that, hope we have some winners this week, and we will talk soon.